Hello and welcome to Weekly Open. I'm Brian here with everybody. But first, let me tell you about FTX. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX. They're our partners for this show and every episode of Weekly Open. You can check them out on the FTX app. Go to weeklyopen.com/FTX. Make a trade from one asset to another simply right there in the app. Earn yield on your coins, track your portfolio, all that good stuff that you've known and loved. But you need to do it from the FTX app, weeklyopen.com/FTX. We got Luke, we got Don, and returning, Cred. What's up, bud?
Hello, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. You know, Josh had too many, he's got fund stuff and fund market updates to do, and no fund would ever listen to me. So I've come to the refuge of market analysts, which is Weekly Open. So yeah, no, good to be back.
We're happy to have you back. Luke, how you doing? You're on top here.
Doing well, man. It's I think after 2 weeks of having no trade ideas because everything was going down, I think it might be video game and workout season might be over. Coins might be going up again. Wow. So excited to talk about it.
Wow, he's buying the news, selling.
Well, I don't know, but we'll wait. Yeah. I want to see what Don has to say first.
All right, Don, we're gonna get the market update from Don. We are also just gonna hint this. We're gonna mix up some of our segments, try to get some flair in here. You know, we've got creative genius Crypto Cred on the line.
Oh, dear.
In future weeks, we're gonna try to go a little more newsy early in the show and wait a little longer to dig into the charts in the future. But for today, you know, we're just not prepared. So we're still gonna do our market outlook. And Don, how you doing?
Good. I mean, somewhat good. I lifted something today and broke my back. It's like
idiot.
I'm starting to feel like I'm turning 40 or something. It's bad. But
are your NFT bags that heavy that immediately just get in?
I mean, I lightened up on them.
Right.
I actually sold a bunch of my NFTs at the absolute peak or bottom of NFTs. So that's that. But yeah. No, doing all right. I mean, market's up quite a bit. I don't really know what to make of it.
Okay, next.
I mean, we can do that as well. And then you have to do it.
Oh dear, yeah. Time to listen to four guys tell you maybe up, maybe down, and then log off and watch something else, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Luke. Yeah, not Luke, Ledger, sorry.
Well, all we did was go back to the starting point, right? Once again, the weekend is a scam. So we were at this level roughly on Friday. We now back at it, at least on Ethereum terms. I don't look at Bitcoin because, you know, who would? Useless coin. Even in donating to Ukraine, it's like 5-1 Ether to BTC, which is incredible. But continue on there, Don.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that as I'm looking at Bitcoin. I feel a little bit insulted, but no, but it's still the same, really. As you said, we're still in the area of monthly support, which, I mean, I've said multiple times, you should not be fading. So if you're looking for shorts, this is like one of the worst areas to look for them, in my opinion. That said, the weekly is kind of just chopping around. We actually closed the weekly below support last week, just marginally, but it's still like a close below support. So if we close this week below it as well, I'm going to think we're going to start breaking down, which honestly would make sense given that we've had this strong momentum going into the weekly open, right? So if we reverse all of that during the course of this week, it would make sense to kind of just go down. It's not something that I'm necessarily counting on. I don't want to be too bearish or too bullish here, just based on the fact that we're still driven by news headlines. We're still driven by the situation in Ukraine. I don't really do too much when I'm at the mercy of like geopolitics and basically a war going on. So for me, it's really, really tough to call it. But yeah, we closed below support. I want to see how that develops going into this week. If we kind of close above it again, that'd be a nice kind of higher low, and then we can actually start heading up. But for me, like this week is still for chilling. I don't really have to rush into anything unless there's something on the lower timeframes, as in daily and below, where you have like momentum going one side or the other that you can hop onto. There's not really like on the high time frames that there's not that much interesting going on. And with the daily, we're just running into resistance right now. which I think if we break that, that'd be a really good first sign that we're actually turning the corner somewhat. So like a close above 40.6K today would make me think that there's a chance that we either like just range in here or in general just break up. So that is something that the minimum that I want to see is a close back into 40s today. And then we can go from there, kind of either play the range from 40 to 44, or even if you want to be super bullish, expect the range breakout. That's fine by me. Like either one is really okay, because if we go all the way to 44, that area has been tested so many times that, I mean, you can be bullish through it, in my opinion. It just needs that close above resistance, because otherwise you're just basically chasing it into resistance, which is not necessarily what I want to be doing.
Being bullish into resistance is a hobby of mine. So I'll be able to get on board with that level. Don, your capacity to do nothing is truly an admirable skill. I cannot do that. Like, I just want to overtrade all this crap.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've trained my entire life for it. Sitting around doing nothing. I'm good at it.
Yeah, you know, he's a complacent boomer when he says lower time frames and then says daily. Like most people listening are going to think, fucking hell, mate, I've not looked at that time frame in months.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if y'all can actually see YouTube, but when I switch over to my screen, I wonder if this potential chart pattern would really piss Cred off or not. This as a welcoming committee back to the show.
Excellent.
We are kind of holding this. I don't even know what you would call it. A non-pattern, but a series of higher lows. Maybe it ends up being one of these kind of multi-year consolidations that is like inverse 2018, except for probably lasts longer than 2018. That's still my working hypothesis, is that there's more absorption to the lower boundary, but also this willingness to sell like high 60s. I don't care if it turns into a chart pattern or not, but it's kind of supportive of your crab theory, Don. Like if the dollar, you know, now we're seeing like the ruble is down 40% or something stupid. Is that really true? Like I couldn't actually see that when I went to look at whatever, forex.com or whatever those markets were. It looked like it was kind of all over the place. But
yeah, it got battered because people are looking at the rates that banks themselves are quoting as opposed to just like the CFDs or whatever. And yeah, there was a bit of an overnight move, to say the least.
So I guess Bitcoin's, you know, really mooning for Russians. Do y'all have any narrative stuff out there that you're interested in talking about with regards to like currency stuff going on and, you know, SWIFT stuff shutting down? Like, are Russians Russian to Bitcoin?
Wow. You really went there.
Nice. I think the more interesting thing is that you're going to be very hard pressed. And look, the shitty geopolitical situation, the war, the humanitarian crisis obviously takes precedence, right? But hopefully we'll move on from it and the world will be a better place, etc. And then, you know, 6, 12, 18 months down the line, whatever it may be, you're going to be very hard pressed to make an argument that Bitcoin isn't money, right? When you see the government of Ukraine posting like Bitcoin, ETH, and I think there was like a Tron, the RC20 address or something, some other, I think USDT on Tron address, I think was one of the tweets. But anyway, you know, you're going to have a hard time making an argument that crypto isn't money. Especially like Bitcoin and ETH, which is bullish in general. However, I think one thing to bear in mind is at the moment it's the good guys in terms of the skew of what the international community thinks, right? It's the good guys using Bitcoin as money. Now you can imagine the other side of that sword, which is if a regime we don't like then tries to raise money using Bitcoin or circumvent sanctions or do whatever else using Bitcoin, you suddenly go from, hey, look how good BTC is as money, to potentially, you know, the same sanctions and the same weight of all this multinational infrastructure cracking down on a form of money used by people we don't like. So that part to me is kind of scary. You know, it's fine while it's the good guys, but if it's the bad guys, that's when you get like, I think, peak regulatory FUD. Hopefully we don't have that many conflicts to go through all these scenarios, but that's just something at the back of my mind in terms of moneyness in general.
Yeah, I think one more narrative that I think everyone should at least keep an eye on. I've seen Split Capital talk about this. I saw Mohammed El Arian talk about it. This is kind of still like a pipe dream if it plays out like this. But based on just the geopolitical concerns, based on potentially Russia's economy collapsing, all these things, is if central banks now take a more accommodative stance versus what they've been doing, which is expectations of a lot of hikes, expectations of crazy hikes. That's what the market's been trying to price in. That's the largest reason we were correcting. I mean, we were selling off well before Russia moved into Ukraine. So if all of a sudden central banks or countries get a little bit too spooked and maybe they don't raise as fast or they don't raise as high, that is even a slight change in that. It changes the market's expectations, and that I think that's even kind of driving some of the move right now. As people are already speculating that in March, the hike is going to be a little bit less, or maybe there's just going to be less hikes. So I think that's another really important narrative change to watch, because it changes the outlook and the expectation, not only for next month, but really for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I guess the big talk in terms of Fed tapering stuff is whether it's going to be 25 or 50 basis points. And it does seem like it might be more likely to just do 25 because it's the safest play, the like don't affect too much stuff play, which the market might respond well to. I don't know. We're LARPing as macro people right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds so fucking desperate, doesn't it? Like the market gets battered because of these rate hike expectations. And then it's like, but guys, there's a war and therefore those rate hikes, they're still going to happen, but they might come later or slower. And therefore this is bullish. It's like, I don't know. It sounds fucking mental to me. You've got like unprecedented central bank sanctions going on, all this other shit. You have people who lost money when everything was up only. Then you have people losing money on the correlation with risk assets and the whole decoupling meme. And like the headwinds and the macro stuff is only going to get more complicated and has been only getting more complicated. Yet people are still like looking for a higher frequency of trades as those conditions are getting kind of more obtuse. Like, I don't know, to me, it's like a broader sign of not desperation, but it's like, holy shit, guys, what are we reaching for here when we're sort of comfortable or coping with the fact that this war will mean that maybe risk assets do well because central banks are going to be more reluctant to hike. I mean, that sentence in itself is fucking mental.
I know CMS even tweeted about that. He's like, every single time we're about to hike, it's like, not to make light of the situation, but then we have COVID. Now we have this. It's like, someone's pulling the strings, doing whatever they can to keep printing money. But I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, March is coming up. Great month, right? Historically.
Oh, seasonality. Are you filling in for Josh on that?
No, not at all. Not at all. Just PTSD,
One other thing in terms of all of this is we can talk about, what legacy markets are doing, what the S&P is doing. NASDAQ and Bitcoin, or NASDAQ and ETH, are basically trading together. And some of that, maybe there's some snapback rally type stuff that's just occurring there. The S&P is not exactly screaming at you to do anything fast either, especially as even if some stuff recovers, what helped the S&P maintain some of its strength was energy doing well. So like if energy backs off or some of that stuff, it's always going to kind of balance out. This is my old man moving averages, but everybody in the world, every boomer in the world looks at this 200-day moving average. We're getting pretty close to it on the underside. So that's one of those that you can look at in terms of if we flip it, then what? Same for kind of the 20-week. There's a longer gap between here and there. So maybe it's just pure chop season. I do think last week, the whole buy the invasion thing, like it created this insane wick on the S&P that historically would be the type of thing where everybody's worried, everybody's scared, whatever, and then that marks kind of this massive bottom wick that you grind up over months to kind of recover. That would be a pretty good scenario in terms of for crypto. If you just had this kind of looping grind, for the S&P. Crypto can do whatever it wants to do in that environment where it's not, the decorrelation could start to occur some. Just a little extra food for thought that might be meaningless. And then one other thought, I guess, is ARK and some of these other kind of unloved things also at least made some kind of temporary bottom. There's also a lot of crypto exposure within ARK between coin and GBTC and even Tesla and a lot of crypto adjacent type of exposure, thanks to Kathy. But yeah, I think
that still looks so shit.
It does. It's just like, it's not at the lows anymore, right? It went from 57 to 72. It doesn't mean it's going to make this next leg, right? That would be kind of okay, this is a stronger rebound, and, go sell 90 with everything you've got, basically, right? If you held this from 150 and you get 90, you should consider it a gift. So it kind of, what are you trying to capture there? Because you got a bunch of bag holders. But yeah, I
mean, you say that, Ledger, but every time the market reaches resistance that you planned out months in advance, all you do is buy NFTs. You don't de-risk shit.
I have not been that heavy of an NFT buyer lately. I have bought some. Yeah. Okay. One other thing from a legacy sense is Coinbase had positive earnings, and it got just absolutely drilled. Its earnings came out the same day that the entire market bottomed, so it's kind of responding favorably there. I don't know that the Coinbase correlation means anything to crypto anymore, but worth mentioning. All right, so we're sitting here at 41K. Somebody in the chat reminded me that we are not exactly where we were on the weekend. ETH is exactly where it was at the beginning of the weekend. Bitcoin is actually, $1,000 higher, so congrats. What are y'all looking for this week? Are we just going to be like sitting on the freaking wire looking for news? Is that what we're victims of? Is just whatever's coming across, or is there anything else that we can pay attention to?
I think there's a chance Light is going to be right.
What was Light's theory?
That everything besides Bitcoin is going to do really poorly, and Bitcoin is going to do okay. I don't know. I look at ETH BTC and it looks really bad to me. And I look at the other altcoins and they almost all look really bad to me as well. And I could honestly see this like ascending triangle fail this week if Bitcoin starts rallying. And even if it doesn't, I could see this fail. So I'm on Team Light for now. Not really excited about the altcoins. I think there's possibility of Bitcoin actually doing really well. Not entirely sure how that would translate to the altcoins, because like this chart doesn't inspire any confidence in me. But I could be saying that as support before the ascending triangle or whatever plays out. But in my experience, whenever it looks like this, dumps out and then either goes up or just completely goes to shit. So I think like we're probably going to see an ETH BTC kind of pullback, or you can't even call it a pullback anymore because it's just been going sideways. So just kind of failure of the pattern on ETH BTC. So I could see Light have like the correct kind of view on this, just based on ETH BTC chart. And there's obviously going to be outliers, even if I'm right, even if ETH BTC goes down, there's going to be one or two altcoins that go up. But as a whole, I'm not too excited about the altcoins, but would love to hear your guys' opinion on it, because I mean, I don't have any positions. I'm not shorting. It's just my gut feeling tells me this is kind of shitty.
Solana looks almost exactly like the ARC chart that I posted. So I think some of these might actually do okay, just from a rebound perspective, because people who are just consistently selling might just not. And then you're always going to have some degree of, people that are going to want to buy the dip in the things that used to move fast. So they're going to try that again. But I wouldn't count on that for more than a couple of days into a recovery. And I think you're probably right that Bitcoin dominance has like a fantastic narrative right now that it doesn't often have. So probably due for that kind of thing. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I'm going to try to pull up the chart. If you look at everything since the bottom, I can't share.
I'm working on it. I knew it was coming. Now you can.
Beautiful.
God, that BTC chart is so bad.
If we look at everything since the bottom, which was like the 24th, right, going into the weekend, when Bitcoin printed its lowest, everything, that used to move fast, let's just call it that, call it layer ones, new layer ones, the phone trade. Those things are obviously ripping, Luna being in the lead. I kind of find it tough to believe that if Bitcoin does move up, I know it has the strongest narrative it's had in a while. It would make the most sense for Bitcoin to kind of outpace things if it follows Light's theory, but that just isn't showing so far. Like I honestly think that some of these things are so depressed that it only takes like a slight, Bitcoin at 42 or even 44K. Like I think these things keep ripping another 20 to 25%. Granted, that's if Bitcoin's up. Now, if Bitcoin's down, obviously this downside capture is going to be horrible. But I mean, it's strange. Like even throughout the bull market, we didn't have DeFi outperforming Bitcoin. Right now, we have even DeFi right above Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes up this week, I'd be very surprised if Near, Luna, Sol, all those don't bounce a little bit harder.
Whenever I talk to Cred, I always feel like I'm going to say some kind of thing that is going to get me made fun of, because I'm tempted to say, lose this level and it's lights out.
Lights out.
But that is not comfy, to Don's point. I just wanted to get to a more rational time frame than whatever his monthly chart was.
That's his low time frame chart.
Yeah. So we're on Don's low time frame chart here. The struggle I have is that your upside is kind of this bearish retest, whatever type of thing. And your downside is losing 2 weeks of just gross consolidation on a relative basis. And it truly looks like, there's just this big air gap down to here, like who knows where it stops, somewhere in there, maybe. And there's just so much downside. If you have that down day, that your down day is like negative 25% for Solana, while Bitcoin's down like 5%. And your up day is not attractive. Maybe it goes up twice as fast and goes down to 5 times as fast. So from a velocity perspective, I don't love that. But if you're like hyper confident in your trade, then maybe that snapback would work. I don't disagree with that, Luke.
Yeah, it's such a weird spot, right? Like Luna and Luna is probably a little bit different because it had they raised that $1 billion or whatever they did for the LFG project. And people love stables. So I don't know. It's looking at the Luna chart and how this thing's already recovered its all-time highs. Like obviously, I don't expect Solana and AVAX to do that immediately. But you can see like Solana, looking at Near, looking at a lot of these, they haven't even started to move up versus Bitcoin. So even like moving to their monthly level, I guess it only gives you 10 or 15%. I think throughout the week, though, I like that trade. If you expect Bitcoin to be up, I think those outperform. And then after that, as you said, yeah, it starts to look a little bit like a bearish retest. So maybe pump the brakes. But I think in the very short term, like the next couple of days, if Bitcoin's up, I would rather be long Near, Solana, and those, even if they haven't moved like Luna has. I would kind of expect them to a little bit.
I'm fine with like correlation matrix punts if you want to chase the market with more juice. But I think one of the things I'm keeping in the back of my mind going into this year, especially, I don't know, I think the L1 trade to me is pretty fatigued and got to pretty weird levels at the end of the year where it kind of stopped being, the Sol Luna AVAX hedge fund darling trade basically played out to an enormous extent. And then you started going to like, here's the second L1 basket and we're going to try to make that a thing. And it wasn't because there wasn't enough juice or narrative power, if you will, left to drive that. And the market itself was kind of fatigued at that point. So you weren't going to have the same bid. I think if anything, at least for me, like bigger time frame, if I'm going to be punting L1s and be that, for continuation later in the year, or if everything pukes and I'm looking to buy something, so I can afford rent with like a liquidation candle, I'm going to be buying ETH because to me, at least, narratively, structurally, etc. I don't know how much more on like at least a quarterly, bi-quarterly, whatever basis, I'm realistically expecting to squeeze out from the L1 narrative. And, something that happens from cycle to cycle is very early cycle coins and very late cycle coins tend to be like very simple and straightforward narratives like, oh, here's an exchange coin. Exchanges have a lot of volume. This is going to go up. And then you get your memes early in the market. And then you also get your memes topping the market, right? And for me, that like, complex, like chronology of complexity, when you start getting into like layer 2, layer 1 trades, that's like a bit too deep for me. And I'd probably be looking for like something a bit shinier, a bit more interesting if things really pick up, because I really do think the hedge fund darling trade, I mean, I'm not sure what the upside on that is, but it's certainly a long way to go if things don't look pretty, as Ledger said. But ETH for me is much more comfy in general. I don't know if that's a hot take or anything.
I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's fine. I've got one for you here. Which wrecked new coin where people are in profit is better. The one where venture capital is behind Immutable X and it's down 70% or whatever off of its launch, or Looks, where degenerate people like myself were the seed investors and it's down 70% off its launch. Yet, in both cases, it's NFTs, it's exchange stuff, and everyone's still in massive profit who are in the seed rounds. Are these attractive at any point? Either one. Like, I don't care. Pick your poison, your NFT pre-sale poison. Is this an area where you're willing to go catch some knives, or what's at play there, you think?
Oh man, I don't know about these, to be completely honest with you.
What's funny is nobody gave Immutable X crap the same, but it's exactly the same thing as Looks.
It's all Gainsey's fault, to be honest. That's the only reason.
Gainsey.
Yeah. I don't know, man. From cycle to cycle, the core argument for new shiny stuff tends to be that it doesn't carry with it the luggage of previous bag holders who, if the market has reached down low enough, turn into perpetual sellers on every bounce, even when there's an absence of a bounce. Maybe the timing isn't perfect for that, but I could definitely see, if presuming NFTs stick around, which I think they will, and things look more positive generally, you get projects which lean into the now unpopular and scrutinized, tokenomics and staking models that these newer platforms have had, and there's just like a shinier, less bag holder, less broken coin or infrastructure play that comes out, especially, and perhaps more importantly, at a time when the market doesn't look like total shit. And that's probably going to be the tailwind that I think you get some outperformance in the shiny stuff, not only because it learns the lessons from the Gainsey tweet coin, but also because the market itself looks better, and so you don't get charts that look like this. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But sure, maybe there's some weird first mover, everyone who wanted to sell has already sold, yada yada thing going on. But those, I don't know, looks a bit dangerous to fade this.
I mean, yeah, they're not pretty charts, and I'm not trying to tell anybody to buy it. I don't care if you buy my bag or not. As the Twitterverse knows well, I've already more than made my initial money, so you're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't buy it. But I just want to bring it up because I just watched these knives falling and falling and falling. And, if you want to get NFT exposure, which a lot of people do, I just was reading another hedge fund report where it was like, yeah, we don't have near enough NFT exposure and we're not actually sure how to get it. So it wouldn't surprise me if getting it via these liquid markets is the way for some of these funds to get it eventually when the time is right.
Do you think there's a chance that OpenSea actually gets a token at some point?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I forget who tweeted it. It was one of their investors.
The CTO actually tweeted something about it too.
Yeah. Basically, they're incentivized not to, right? They have the golden goose. Why do they want to?
Their equity is tremendously valuable because they have an attractive fee structure for themselves already and a dominant market share. So they're many tokens, and to be from a disclosure point of view, I view my company the same way, right? So I don't see a token for Flip being smart either, because as an equity play, if you can manage to get user share and have real equity, you have power in your real equity, and then your valuation potential in the long-term sense is much better. In the short-term sense, when you're newer or you're whatever, it's not necessarily as valuable because the investors typically are going to value quick liquidity through a token. But as you see, like with Uniswap, they can't really turn on their rev share to their token holders because it makes it look like a bad security. But if you can have a real security and all of your fees are feeding your actual company and eventually potentially your actual shareholders through a dividend or whatever in the long-term sense, you take advantage of an actual securities market and go public. That's much more attractive from a valuation perspective. They would absolutely be like a Wall Street darling, and they can just go public. And that's not a very Web3 answer. It's not like a DAO, but let's be honest, OpenSea is not going to be a DAO. They're a centralized exchange with, decentralized custody of the assets that are traded on their exchange. And I think that's fine. So I don't think they're well incentivized for a token.
Yeah. I mean, I wish they would make me a bunch of money.
It'd make us money, but it doesn't make their shareholders more money.
Yeah.
So Ledger, to your point about the hedge fund, how do we get exposure, etc. I think it'd be much easier for them to just fund another Looks Rare-esque seed round and enjoy that, rather than buy your 1000x and hope it ends up being the next best thing since sliced bread.
1000x, sir.
It's only 30x, right?
No, I think it's probably like a 5x now, which is
you poor thing. Hope you're okay.
Modest.
Hope you're okay. But you get the broader point, right? I think there are better ways to get, if you're a fund with presumably deal flow and connections, etc., to get infrastructure exposure than buying something that looks like Looks at the moment,
Sure. No,
unless it gets pretty crazy.
I mean, I honestly thought they would do more with the attention that they gathered. Like, they've built a lot of stuff, but they've not really retained a lot of users, right? Which is sad to see.
What? Looks?
Yeah. I mean, there's not that much going on there in terms of actual like NFT trading in comparison to anywhere else. Like, if you compare to OpenSea, which is obviously a monumental task, right, to steal like user share from OpenSea, but we really haven't seen too much of like users actually migrating.
But it's helped Tornado Cash adoption a lot, right? So that's important.
I think the jury's out on that. Like, I think they still have some opportunity that, for a variety of reasons that we can talk later about, aren't visible yet. And I think the Coinbase launch will help that, I guess. You need, as liquidity bifurcates, it encourages liquidity to further bifurcate and for fees to become kind of the primary reason as the attention economy gets confused. Because right now you can primarily go on OpenSea and understand the market, and soon that will not be true.
I think one of the other
I'm literally
challenges...
pumping my own bags now because this is what my business model is. That's what the aggregation market for NFTs is, very valuable. And when Coinbase launches, you'll have millions of customers that are only willing to transact NFTs on Coinbase, and then there's a black hole of like, where do I understand the market?
I think one of the challenges that Looks Rare might face, and I hope it doesn't plague Looks Rare, is like a coin like ZRX. Like Matcha, I think, is one of the most useful. It's an aggregator, right? So aggregating Uniswap, SushiSwap, all those things. But like the token just doesn't benefit. I hope Looks Rare doesn't get put into that, where I think it's a very good thing for the NFT market. Competition's great. People want new features. As Coinbase NFT pops up, it's going to be great. Like aggregators will help out with that, Ledger, as you were saying. But I hope that the Looks Rare doesn't turn into like I hope it's a good platform. I think people do enjoy it, but it's like, is the token gonna benefit from that? I haven't dug deep enough into like when all the selling will stop, but I don't know. Like, I think it's overall a good thing for all users, token wise. I don't know.
Well, we've not actually seen fee share be good for tokens across the market, although that's what most people say they want. Fee share, it makes it harder to give these a valuation at a super, super high multiple because it brings logic into the equation. So you say like, all right, well, if this is sharing $1 billion worth of revenue with token holders, then a 10x of revenue to, like multiple is kind of like a price to sales ratio that you can apply. Very much like you
Cope. I think if any of that were remotely applicable, irrespective of like broader market conditions, like DeFi 1.0 would still be super relevant. We'd all have our awesome models there. But no one gives a shit, right? These metrics, etc. Yeah, right. So that's what I mean. Like, if the broader market, and once you kind of lose that broader market tailwind, it's very hard to recover on the merits that you're making, right? I feel once you kind of lose that momentum, where you've got like the positive FA feedback loop, if you will, which is mostly just cope/marketing, but then you've got the broader market sales and new novelty and hype, which are the real drivers. If you kind of lose that, it's then hard to recover based on just the quote unquote fundamentals, because the DeFi 1.0 is, fucking dead for basically that reason, amongst others, of course.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the type of, people don't pay attention to those things until it's a bear market, and then you're like, oh,
right.
there's tremendous value.
Yes.
But I do think in the long term, that's what you're seeking, right? Like you're the complacency bounce of a bull market is not probably the best place to like seek those multiple. If we're, I don't know, are we even complacency bouts?
What are we?
most of those tokens just stayed wrecked. Like, honestly, if we are at, let's assume the bull market is over and we're all just trying to figure out when we can hit the escape hatch. The only things that really had like a great scam exit pump were NFTs themselves, but it was mostly new projects. It wasn't necessarily like all your old bags. It was, Bored Apes and then a bunch of new stuff. So like if this is the end of the market, which it could be, it looks different than the end of the last market. It's not the same. And we've not seen like a good DeFi 1.0 exit pump. Will we ever? Like, it's just, there's no liquidity.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general with these kind of things, it's legitimately just going to get quicker and quicker. Like people have realized that if they pump other people's bags, they're going to have to do so through a bunch of cells. I think that like Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, to Ripple to an extent have taught that lesson to like more wealthy kind of market participants well. I've actually seen like Sue actually like was in favor of like Litecoin pumping and older coins pumping for a little bit. And then he got absolutely like blasted basically by the market because no one really cared, right? Because the Litecoin and the Bitcoin Cash holders, they're more than happy to sell into anything that they get, right? And I think most people have kind of learned that lesson, and it's just something that is now at the forefront of pretty much everyone's mind. So it's really, really hard to pump stuff that has already pumped before, because we all know that if you want to really hit the big multipliers, you probably don't want to go where people still hold and hope for an exit, right? It's basically just going to slow your train down. And it doesn't really help you to have seniority in crypto, because we're all pretty much, we're not loyal to anything. We just jump to whatever is shiny, and then we abandon it the moment it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or once it has done what it's supposed to do, which is pump, right? That's my view on why I think there's probably not going to be like a big DeFi pump that kind of rescues everyone. I think there's a good chance that it just keeps on bleeding out.
From a speculative sense, I think that's absolutely accurate. I think from a product usage sense, eventually things where they're still used and have some kind of tokenomic structure, they will become attractive at some point. But that's not to say they're attractive today. They like Aave could be an attractive token in 2 years or something, because people use Aave. And Uniswap or Sushi or whichever dexes survive, or to your point about like Mancha and 0x, if they figure out how to put all this together, they could become attractive in the future, but it might take a really long time to kind of normalize how to value these things. And that's putting aside any regulatory risk that might exist in the meantime.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong.
Aave, for example, is 2 billion, right? Market cap price.
Yeah.
And then how the fuck, like, even if people use that, is that in any way, shape or form actually like something that makes sense? Like how many people would have to use it to make that kind of something that makes sense? I don't know, like that goes way beyond what my capabilities are, but I feel like in crypto, we have these way inflated market caps that make it really, really difficult to even make that argument of, okay, people use this, so it should be worth more, because it's already worth so much. It's just maybe worth, like there's maybe other things that aren't used that are worth more. But yeah, it's really hard, I think, to make the value argument just because of the values that we already have. But maybe that's just my boomer brain going into overdrive.
Aave's annualized total revenue is $235 million. So its price to sales is 9.5x, which is by no means like a high growth rate. Its price to earnings, which annualized protocol revenue. Okay, total revenue versus protocol revenue is an 89x. So like a PE ratio would be, so that's actually quite heavy growth. So yeah, we were measuring these things like, market cap versus like TVL, right? That was the meme. Oh, you're laughing at that. But when you look at it that way, it's like $2 billion versus $12 billion locked, dollars that people entrust Aave with, that looks very valuable. When you look at it versus like their actual net protocol revenue, it's not as attractive. So, the market has to figure these things out, and the market figures those things out in a bear market. It's not when it, I do think, attention and therefore dollars into the coins will on the other side, right? Like on a new speculative market, the first things to pump before new things come out will be the old things that people still use. So I think it's worth paying attention to, hey, is Aave the place to do DeFi, or is Uniswap, or whatever DeFi 2.0 is? Those seem to kind of all go away. What's DeFi 2.0? Like, do any of those get used? I know Curve gets used. That's DeFi 1.0. Like, what's DeFi 2.0 that's lasted? We got memed to death for like, not being in DeFi 2.0, but what is sticky from that?
Well, the problem is that we're all not really interested too much, so we can't.
Yeah, none of them's a good trade. Like, you'd rather own ETH over all of them, right?
Yep.
I just love when you start applying like traditional market, quote unquote, fundamentals to crypto DeFi protocols, because it only happens in two instances, right? Once is when it's already pumping and you're using those to justify why it should pump another 10x. And the other time is when it's dumping really hard and you're trying to find a reason as to why it's oversold or doing whatever else. It's anything else in the middle is questionable at best. I agree with Z, or Zed, as I guess I should call him, if I'm being British English, when he says that, applying this stuff to DeFi, especially if you have much more significant market tailwinds or headwinds, it's just not super useful yet. I don't think we've reached that degree of sophistication to justify that analytical framework, especially if you consider like downside correlations converging towards one, past a certain volatility threshold. It's like, well, what's the fucking point, right? That's kind of my view, at least. I'm sure it'll be useful later, but it's kind of just like a lot of the decoupling in terms of just like, there's not going to be, how many fund manager threads did we see at the top on Twitter about like, here's why there'll be no bear market. And it's always some really stretched argument about how you're going to get like sectoral pumps and sectoral rotations, this, that, and the other. I love the idea of that. I just don't think we're there yet. And I think the market's bearing that out at the moment. And I have a similar view when it comes to applying these IRL frameworks to crypto. I don't think the sophistication and the decoupling, dispersion, whatever, is facilitative of that type of.
You say we're all too peanut brained, and peanut brains are the champions of this market.
Something like that. Momentum and reflexivity and attention and the broader market conditions to me are much more useful than extrapolating from traditional finance or, I don't know, revenues and all that.
Luke, you had XRP on your chart, and I don't know why. Is that something that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, not at all. I was just bringing it up about Dom was talking about altcoins. Will they ever pump again? I mean, this chart it's honestly a work of art.
It just deserves to go to zero. So send it.
The funny thing is, like, XRP actually looks much better than a lot of the other older coins. But yeah, fucking hell.
When lawsuit pump?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
I mean, look at that. Like that. That's bad. Like Litecoin's dead, right?
No, it's the test net for Lightning or something. It's the silver.
I think Litecoin, yeah. Have you seen Litecoin Bitcoin? I mean, I've just looked at it before the show.
Lucifer's pulling them up one by one, every ancient coin. Like, that has nothing but sellers. It's like just people with lots of regret selling ever since 2019.
I mean, imagine being in crypto since like 2018 and only having experienced the bear market. It's like, that's Litecoin basically in a nutshell, right? You're up like 2x or something against USD while everyone else around you got rich in crypto. That's kind of tough. And I think that just kind of reflects the point that I made earlier. Maybe there is going to be like a big kind of washout on Litecoin and the other older coins where it goes down like 70% in a day. People start freaking out and then it actually goes up afterwards again, because then like for some reason we reach like fair value or whatever. But it's so tough to buy these, I think, just based on the history and based on that there's other coins that do whatever they do in the same way without the backholders on board.
Yeah, so I think one of the assumptions I made that I had to like really challenge, because we started a bull market before they were properly dead. But one of the assumptions I made was basically that we weren't going to have another like great bull market until all the altcoins truly just died, like the ones that were garbage or whatever. And what I learned was that wasn't actually true. You know, Bitcoin and Ethereum or like whatever's alive can still go into a bull market. And the way that they can do that is that the market got smart enough to not allow the crappy altcoins to participate in that bull market. So they die throughout the bear market, but then like the true nail in the coffin is not participating in the next bull market, because then as that cycles back down again, in a secondary bear market, then there's literally no liquidity, no interest, no community, everything's gone, and they truly go full zombie, and that they just can't ever participate again. And I think now that like now there's just new tokens all the time, it will have the same thing, right? We'll have a bear market. They won't go to zero. We'll be looking at stuff that's got $1 billion market cap and wonder why. But the way they'll die is to not participate in the next bull market, and there'll be a new batch of coins, and we'll just have thousands and thousands and thousands of these zombies.
Yeah, it's actually crazy, like how inflationary crypto as a whole is, even though like that's kind of the point of it, like not being. But yeah, that's what we deal with, right? When you like hard code a cap into your coins, what you do instead is just make new coins over and over and over again. And then you can have the same inflation that we have in the traditional world in crypto land, just 100 times amplified. And it's like people kind of pretend crypto is so different, but is it really, right? It's like Bitcoin isn't inflating, but everything in crypto is, and to a large extent, just as a whole, not as like on an individual basis.
Don, don't let the NFT people hear your false scarcity argument there.
Yeah, I mean, it's NFTs 10 times worse, actually. And I'm starting, like, with the NFT stuff, it's really starting to get bad, I feel like.
There's only 10,000 of these. Now, next week, we'll have 10,000 of, like, a slightly different, member of the animal kingdom.
Fishing rods, yeah.
Yeah.
Or fishing.
I'm actually very, very bearish on that long term. Like, if you have your money in profile pictures long term.
If you have 100% of your money in NFTs at this moment, you will be broke. You will be completely broke.
And I mean, I don't have, like, I never had much money in NFTs, right? And I started selling, and it was fucking hell. It took me so long. And then at some point I was happy to sell the bottom, because I was like, fuck this, dude. I'm sitting here for days trying to sell this shit. I'm more than happy to sell the bottom, even if it is the bottom, because at least at the bottom, there's going to be liquidity to kind of get me out. So
I'm like picturing the inverse of the "this is mine" meme, but Don being like, "This is yours."
Yeah, it's bad. And I mean, the thing is, like, the worst part about all of the NFT stuff is you're all diversified, right? So what you do is you have like a bunch of projects that you hold. And then you start being like bearish. You think, okay, there's a downturn coming, and you start selling. And the only things that do sell, the only things that you can actually get rid of is the good stuff, right? Because no one buys the garbage shit. So you have to like mark down the garbage shit 30% by yourself until you eventually find buyers. And sometimes you don't even get that still. And then you have the good stuff that sells immediately. And that might actually go up. So you can only sell the strong ones, which you don't want to be selling, and the weak ones you cannot sell.
But you have to sell the strong ones on the way up at the same time, right? Like there's this constant, you're short ETH when you're long in NFT, so you're constantly like selling into that pump to close your short of Ethereum to gain more Ethereum, and then you need to win at least one 10x to make up for 9 pieces of crap.
It's a wild market.
Yeah. I mean, I just think the number go up mentality as being the reason NFT has to go away but then the prices will be way lower. The number of, the reason your NFT becoming more experiential rather than speculative could sustain, but you might have a very long NFT bear market in the meantime. I don't know. Are we just fudding, Luke?
I mean, I think to tie these together is if you want to buy some NFTs, if you want to splurge and you also want to play some old coins, you can kind of just treat Litecoin, Tron, EOS, Ripple. You could kind of treat those as like an NFT. Buy one Ripple, hold one Litecoin. It reminds you of previous cycles, and it probably won't go up over the long term, but it's fun to hold.
What's that, like 7 cents? 75. Yeah, like 75 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, a binary bet, I guess, would be why. I don't understand why you could care. Don, when you're talking about how you have to like personally mark the NFT down 30% just to get rid of it, that speaks to me, because if 10 people do that, like you're down 90. I don't not check out that math, but you're down a lot real quick.
Yes.
Because the liquidity of an NFT market is just not the same.
Yeah, I think you'll get better over time, right? That's like a clear path of innovation, at least for higher end collections, or liquidity as a service that, if you go past OpenSea, I know this is being worked on a bit, but it's clearly not widespread. Just having essentially liquidity providers, market makers, or, designated dealers, so to speak, when it comes to NFTs. I think if anyone's looking at the trading volume that these things do, especially at the peaks or when the market's really good, there's definitely some incentive to iron out how trading is done. So I think that'll get better over time. But at the moment, I mean, most of the prices that you see, especially for like mid-range rares or whatever, they're completely illusory, right? Because you might think, the next one along is 10 ETH and my one is 9.8, but no one's buying that price for a reason. Like the floor is resistance, right? And so then you have to go basically fishing for liquidity, which would just mean providing a sufficient discount for someone to bite. And it could even be that people want to trade when liquidity is scarcer only at the floor and not at your mid-range or rares or whatever. And therefore, whatever price you've ascribed to them as being, this is the floor for this trade, it's a completely fake price, because you're never going to get to sell that. And that's pretty tricky. And so I think at least as a starting point, if you want to trade NFTs, I mean, if you get a rare off mint, flipping that is like pretty legit. But generally speaking, I'm happy to carve out an argument for mostly trading at the floor to at least try to get some sort of guarantee of liquidity in a market where, you can't even gauge depth or anything like that. I could be wrong. I'm an idiot with these things after all.
No, I actually agree. I think like if you don't have like very, very high conviction in like an NFT project, which I mean in itself sounds like fucking weird to me. But you should probably just stick to the floor, because people don't value rarity as you do. And when prices go down, and if you want to sell when prices go down, you're never going to be able to sell your rares for the appropriate price. I mean, you can put it at the floor and people could still not buy it, just because like during downturns, no one really gives a shit. And then when it goes up, people give a shit again. And then you can get lifted out. So like if you have anything that is not the typical kind of floor piece, you're only going to be able to really sell that during the upturns, which is fine. But for that, you have to have strong conviction. Otherwise, you're just going to pay more to get like something more rare, and then you're gonna just basically sell it for floor prices if you want to get rid of it during downturns.
Even if it's not a downturn, even if it's an upturn, actually one of the things that I've seen is that the rare to floor ratio goes down as the floor goes up, because they just start hitting barriers, right? Like if you're trying to say you buy something for 10 ETH and the floor is 1 ETH, and then the floor goes to 10 ETH, can you sell it for 100 ETH? You have to at least sell it for 100 ETH, or else you should have spent your 10 ETH buying 10 1 ETH items, 1 ETH floors. So if you can 10x on floors, can you 10x on the rare? And rarely do you actually get that, right? Like typically your ratio for your rare is going to actually be a little slower moving than your ratio on your floors. And you'll have the trouble with liquidity. So it's kind of a dually purposed problem. The only time that it does make sense to do it is if you do have confidence that you'll be able to sell, and you'd rather make one transaction than 10, or more importantly would be like maybe 2 or 3 transactions rather than like 50. You know, like you would crush the floor if you own too high of a number of them. So for a higher roller that doesn't want to destroy the market when they're trying to sell those floors, then I think it does make sense to buy a couple rares potentially if they have like this long-term bullishness. That's the only argument to me that makes sense though. Because otherwise, if you're probably better off just buying like 5 floor pieces.
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, in general with the NFT stuff, that one thing that I want to say with like the NFT market maturing, the one problem that we kind of have is that I think the NFT market is already basically at the point that we are with like the crypto markets and coins, where there's a million of them, right? There's so many projects that is actually starting to become really, really difficult to move in the market. Yeah. And so you kind of have to pick wisely, and the stuff like the problem is that even if you pick something that is liked by a few, if something bad happens, you're still going to be stuck with a shitty project that no one trades. So it's really, really hard for the market to really improve when you just have a million projects come up every single day. And it kind of does remind me of the ICO times, where you just have a bunch of new projects and they raise money and they take the money that they've raised and put it into like other NFT projects. We've seen that in the last few days a couple of times, where new rug pull projects kind of take their ETH and put it into other NFTs that are more well-known and more liked. And that kind of creates this feedback loop that we've had, right? You get higher prices and like people invest into other NFTs, and at some point the money runs out, right? And it all just kind of giga rugs because
which is why we're announcing the weekly open NFT, right?
It's an experiential NFT, Cred. It's not supposed to number go up. You just give us money and then you experience weekly open.
Oh, wow. Utility right there.
That's right.
Sounds like a security.
So we're out of time, but before we go, is there anything that anybody wants to leave us with in terms of what to watch for?
It doesn't look like it.
Everybody's done.
I mean, for me, honestly, I just still think it's still like video game and chill time. I don't necessarily agree with what Luke said at the beginning, that might come to an end. For me, it's still the same. Enjoy your time with your loved ones, with your family, with your video games or whatever.
Yeah, but for you, that could be like a $20,000 price difference in BTC. Yes. Nothing changes.
I mean, that's true. You can have a different opinion. I think that's fine. Just my personal opinion is it's still boring, still nothing to be too excited about while we have that Ukraine-Russia situation going on in the East.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. I certainly don't expect fireworks. I just think in the scenario that if Bitcoin does move up this week, I would expect those layer ones to outpace. Once again, I don't think it's going to be anything close to what we were having towards the end of last year, but maybe I'm just getting bored of playing video games, dude. I can only play so much FIFA and UFC, so.
I don't know about y'all. I've been freaking busy, so I don't mind not paying attention to the charts for a little while. So I would root for some chop. I'd actually just root for the market to go down. That's fine as well. But that's because I risked off a lot.
Oh, so that is so bullish to hear.
That is so bullish.
I know. I just have too much going on. I can't pay attention to this crap. Cred, you want to leave us with anything?
I mean, TA is, you can carve out arguments for a higher low, and as long as the market's above 38.2, it's okay / looks reasonable. I'm fine with that. I just still think it's an environment where you know, take your profits where you can get them. And in general, for like higher time frame, like proper momentum signals, those start to really flip around 44, 47 or thereabouts. So I think that's the, you know, probably the more compelling kind of momentum entry, which would signal a shift from chop to maybe something a bit more sustained. But in general, you know, it's still very mercenary, algo driven, etc. Looks decent at the moment, above 38.2. But, you know, some humility, I think, at this point in the market also helps. That, you know, you've got macro, you've got geopolitics, algo-driven stuff. There's like a lot of shit going on. So, you know, take what you're given. I don't think this is the right environment to like hang on to massive trades. And, you know, that's it. I'm completely mumbling at this point, but that's kind of my view on the market, right? The conditions have been progressively becoming more difficult to trade with more external factors spilling over into the market. So I've just been far, far, far more picky and selective with the punts I'm willing to take, the timeframes I take them on, and the duration for which I'm willing to hold them. If that changes, great. For now, not a ton of evidence of that outside of the short term.
Time for us to find a new and better edge. I like it.
Right.
All right. Thanks for being here, everybody. Go to weekly11.com/FTX, where you can trade directly from one asset to the other using the FTX app. It's easy. Just go to weeklyopen.com/FTX. Also earn yield on your tokens. There's no trading fees when you're using the FTX app. We appreciate them for being our partners. We appreciate you for being here. Cred, super happy to have you. Luke and Don, have a great day. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.